Hello, welcome to the New Stack Makers, a podcast where we talk about at-scale application development, deployment, and management. Chef has been our sponsor for the podcast from ChefConf here in Austin, Texas. Learn more about Habitat, Inspec, and Chef's focus on continuous automation at chef.io. So I heard about this Hug-O-Meter you guys have.
Hug-O-Meter?
Yeah. Nathan was telling us about the Hug-O-Meter that's in your in the corporate offices. No, I'm kidding.
Is that true?
Yeah, no.
So it's funny. So I live in San Francisco, so I don't go to work in the corporate office every day. Like, I'm not in the Seattle office. And so I was looking at him because I was like, you have a Hug-O-Meter?
Well,
and no one told me?
I feel pretty connected to everybody. Like, it's hiding somewhere.
Super
I don't know
weird.
where it is.
No, Nathan got me. I was like, how do you how do you measure things? He's like, well, actually, we have a Hug-O-Meter.
Well,
and in the corporate office, and like whenever there's a hug, you have a little ping on this map.
It's a virtual Hug-O-Meter.
Right,
well, and one of the basics that we learned from our friends at GE is you can't manage what you don't measure. So.
Yeah, great. Well, I'm here with Barry Crist and Adam Jacob, and Barry's the CEO, and Adam, you're CTO, founder of the company. So co-founder of the company. So thank you guys for joining us for a little chat at the end of the show here.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us. Thanks for coming to the show.
I love this philosophy that you were talking about today with the Roots Band, and the idea that you're gonna go see a band when you go see Roots, right?
You're gonna go see the Roots, and
you're gonna go see the Roots.
You know what they're gonna play.
But they may change it up.
They will definitely change it up.
And how does that relate then to software?
Yeah.
But they're not going to change it up so much that you show up and it's not a band playing music.
Exactly.
Right. They know
you
still know it's the Roots.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the way you relate that to software is that the software of the future and the organization of the future is the one that knows that their intent, that their outcome is to be able to deploy software quickly. It's to be able to manage their infrastructure, remain secure and compliant. They have this list of outcomes that they're driving toward as a business. And when you think about technology, what the implementation is under the hood, the specific platform that we're going to put a compute resource on, that we're going to put an application on, the specific piece of compute, matters a lot less than gaining that capability as an organization. And then sort of coupled to that, I think there's a real problem with the way we've drawn the API boundaries, where we think about an application through its life cycle. And right now, that might be 8 or 10 different things that provide that application's lifecycle. And I think that's a really big mistake when you think about it in that context of the Roots. Because if I was to swap out, say, the build part of that pipeline that's 8 or 10 or 12 or 20 steps long, well, it will have this cascading side effect across all the rest of that pipeline. They're all interconnected, right? But we design as if they're not,
Right.
And so the side effect is that we can't actually talk about that implementation. We can't talk about the behavior of the application as a thing. We can only talk about it in pieces. And so the future is being able to talk about that stuff as the whole band, and we can say that no, the application is the thing that plays the song, and it's always going to be that application in the same way that the Roots are always going to be the Roots.
I guess that speaks to the theme that Barry, you were talking about on the day one. I really caught on to this idea of this concept that McKinsey talks about, digital attackers, and the digital. And the other one is the digital...
the incumbents.
The digital incumbents,
yeah.
Right. And
or just the incumbents, right?
Really
digital attackers and the incumbents.
It really, that also applies, I think, what Adam is talking about, doesn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And the way I think about that specific thing that McKinsey's referring to is, there's this drama that's playing out, and it's getting really acute right now. Like a couple of years ago, we could talk about, hey, there's this thing going on, you want to be more oriented around software and software-driven business. Today it's having huge financial impact on companies that aren't getting quickly there. And I think I sort of made the connection that, if you're struggling making software, you're going to increasingly struggle with customers, and then you're going to struggle financially. And that's not theoretical. That's actually happening. And so I think the imperative to sort of get really good at software is really increasing. And I think if I wanted to bring something here that we're talking to a lot of customers about is a sense of urgency around these things that are getting in the way of them being great at software. And which ironically, oftentimes is not our technology, it's a lot of the culture things that we've been talking about.
So you guys talk a lot about continuous automation.
Yeah.
And and when you're thinking about those companies that are struggling so much, right? Quit an equipment company, you name it, right?
Yeah.
Whatever kind of company it is.
Mm-hmm.
They have a lot of pain points, right? But is continuous automation, what makes continuous automation such a critical juncture for them to really solve?
I'll start and then I'll let Adam jump on it. So first of all, it's not that they're struggling, they know how to do their business.
Right.
It's this big shift specific to IT, which is part of being great at software, which is kind of from the old way of doing things to, let's just call it, outcome oriented, meaning IT's orienting themselves around customer outcomes. And we found working with big companies is that bridge is a very, very long one. And so we sort of thought, well, what's in the middle, in that transitional phase? And what's a really consistent step we see the companies that are moving through this is this kind of, they reach this stage of continuous everything. They can ship very quickly. Change is expressed as software, it's tested, they sort of reduce the amount of energy they're spending on infrastructure, they're getting really good at things like compliance, checking, and so forth. And so it was really let's put a target for something, that's a very reachable state, that's something, more in months, not years.
And I think from a slightly more technical perspective, it's an acknowledgement of this idea that there's no end. It's not like you're going to adopt whatever the next technology is.
Right.
And then you're like, oh, sweet, I'm so glad we solved all our technology problems for the rest of time. It's this continuous problem. It's this continuous life cycle where we're going to be continuously figuring out how we can improve and how we can further automate what we do so that we can focus more on our customer problems and more on those customer outcomes. And that continuous automation piece and having it be absent of a specific technology, I think, is really important because, we're all talking about digital transformation and creating digital attackers, and the reality is that if all we're really doing is getting them to the next technology ticket, whatever it is, if all the digital transformation is you use Chef or you use Kubernetes or whatever it is, like, we didn't transform you, we didn't do anything, we did something. But we didn't transform you, right? Then it's just marketing. And I think it's not marketing. I think we're at a moment in history and a moment in time where there's a real, actual transformation that is going to occur and is occurring right now in every business. And it's going to fundamentally transform the way all business operates. And therefore, it's probably going to change the way everything works sort of for humans across the whole globe.
So, considering those dynamics, how do you think about that internally about your own transformation? And I think of Chef's history as a configuration management, and it seems what you've been able to do is abstract the configuration management to the point where it's built into these new technologies that you've developed, such as Habitat and Inspec.
Well, look, we've definitely taken a very ambitious approach. And I think what started, I'd view configuration management as a use case that we sort of expanded into a broader infrastructure automation platform. And then from there, we've expanded into compliance automation. And we really think what we're doing with compliance is kind of the flip side of that core infrastructure automation. And then, we've been increasingly really putting our shoulder into the application world, particularly around modern application architectures, which is Habitat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, when you think about the arc of those tools, there's a very consistent vein in them. It's not like they're three completely different approaches to the problem, or it's a very similar set of philosophy and a very similar set of behavior that we're applying to other domains that we've seen be in the way of our customers and the people we talk to. So, InSpec solves this really tactical, really visceral problem for people who do security and compliance. And it does that taking the learnings of tools like Chef, of the things from behavior-driven development. Habitat does the same thing. It takes a huge amount of inspiration directly from our experience of building Chef. If we hadn't built Chef, there's no way we could have built Habitat, right? And so much of the way it works is informed by our experiences in those tools. I think one thing we've been really blessed to be able to do, and I think this is to Barry's credit, probably even more than mine, is to be able to make those decisions in the way that are really best for our customers. There's never been a moment where we were forced into a technical decision because we were worried about whether or not it would have some impact that was ephemeral. Like, are we sure that would it upset some other market? Would it bother us in some other place? It's always just been, well, is it the right thing for people who have that problem? Like, is that it? Do we or do we not make their lives better? And that has been a very consistent thing that Barry has instructed me to, like, look, wherever we need to go, whatever technology we need to build, like, we're either making it better or we're making it worse. And I think that's been a really liberating and inspiring thing for me personally. And then I think it's really had a huge impact on the company.
Yeah, thank you.
You're so welcome.
Any thoughts on that?
If I go, think of us when we started working together, 4.5 years ago.
Yeah.
I think just as we took kind of a longer point of view, it's that I used that DJ Patel quote, "Dream in years." And so I think we started thinking about what do we think is going to happen in the industry, where are things going, and what's the place that we want Chef to occupy in that. And I think that was that, and also really bearing into. We talk about outcomes, and it's outcomes for our customers, and they're struggling with a set of things, and infrastructure is part of those sets of things. But there's this sort of interrelation between what's going on in the infrastructure world, the compliance world, and the application world. And in a very simple example of what led us into security and compliance is what I think people ultimately buy from Chef is a form of velocity, right? That's a very common theme. They're trying to increase their velocity. And we saw that compliance area is one that, first of all, like, talk about high drama, low joy, just a tough place to be in.
Super velocity killer.
And just kill velocity. So our point of view is like, how do we, sort of flip this? And so, and as Adam said, those things aren't standalone. They are connected with each other. And I think increasingly, how we're thinking about those interconnections will become even more and more apparent over time.
It's a very fast race. I mean, for everyone, right?
Yeah.
In any kind of way. I mean, we saw what Kelsey was doing on stage today using Google Now.
That changed my life.
And I think
literally one of the coolest things that's ever happened to me in technology.
Yes. I mean, and I think for all of us, just witnessing that, right? And you could tell how careful he was being, right? Because he had set it up correctly, right? He had used, he was being very careful about what he was saying. Update, using words that he obviously had programmed in to the demo itself.
Yes, of course.
Right? And it's that is such a rush of innovation right there, right? Mm-hmm. And
literally, he wrote it last night.
That was amazing.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
And just for everyone who's out there, you can, we actually interviewed him about it today, but essentially he did a demo today. He learned Habitat last night and was able to then...
Scratched his talk. He
had
a prepared talk he was going to give.
Right.
There was a different one.
Right.
He put a tweet out last night and said, hey, reply if you want me to instead orient around Habitat.
Right. And so then he was able to do that, and then he's used this Google Now before for like a keynote he did at PyCon.
Yes.
So he applied it to this demo today. It was just fascinating to me, but I wonder how you guys manage not to just get too caught up in all the rush of all this stuff. I mean, just as a company, and as a company, as a CEO of a company, and as a technology.
And we talk a lot about two states. There's a now state, and that's really what when we use this phrase, continuous automation. It is get companies really good at the thing that's right in front of them, right? And you heard that in the Forrester talk, that most companies are not doing a good job of automation. So master that, and if you do it, you'll take down the calories and the drama and everything you're spending around infrastructure. And then there's sort of a future state discussion, which is, oh my gosh, what a crazy world is out there, right? We got containers, serverless, like microservice, like all this stuff swirling around. And I don't think any of us know exactly what that's going to look like over the next couple of years. It's going to be super dynamic, that's for sure.
I mean, from a technologist point of view, I think it's actually kind of easier. So I think from a business point of view, it's brutal, because you're like, I don't know, it's super frothy. Like, what if we don't go to market the right way? What if we can't explain? What if we're right and we just can't explain it? Like what if we can't sell it? What if we can't train the field? Like, there's all these variables that are super difficult, and you really have to play incredibly good team ball to really have happen. When what you do is just work on the technology, I'm responsible for all those things as a CTO, so I don't get to like wipe my hands and be like, well, I delivered the delicious technology, so figure it out, guys. But the technology part of it is, if you stay focused on actually solving people's real problems, and the only way to stay focused on solving those problems is to be where they are. I've probably been at 6 or 8 customer sites in the last year, writing code, like literally in their house, figuring out how to solve problems that matter to them. And when you do that, it's really difficult to delude yourself. It's really hard to tell yourself that you have something you don't have, or that it's all going to be okay. And instead, it lets you see what's good about the technology that's coming down the road and that's coming at you, and that's maybe disrupting you, or that playing in your space. And it really gives you that freedom to understand, well, what can you build that will help them? What can you do that'll move them forward? And that's why I was saying that a second ago about Barry, that like that gift to be able to do that is so important. But from a technology point of view, you sort of have to play your own game, and you have to look at what everybody else is doing, and you have to incorporate the lessons from what they've done that have been amazing. I think you can look at the Habitat project and its command line interface and that user experience, and you can feel the direct inspiration from Docker, right? Because that's where it came from, because that was awesome. It was so good, and you can't deny it.
No.
And what kind of fool would you be
if you did
to be upset because they maybe compete with me or whatever? Like, and I think it would be a very human thing to be like, oh, it's garbage because Chef is better. But like, you would also be a fool, and instead you need to learn from that and take inspiration and then see if you can make it better. And it's just this constant remixing of technology and of UI and UX and of art, and it sort of all comes together in a way that's a lot like music.
Well, I'd like to thank you both for taking some time. We've really enjoyed the conference, and looking forward to Stubbs tonight. And
it's gonna be good.
It's gonna be.
I'm sorry to all the podcast people who don't get to come to Stubbs tonight. For the record, it was an awesome party, and you wish you were there.
and we'll have to follow up another time on community, because I think a lot of this, what you talked about, is not possible without
Absolutely.
that community.
No question.
Yeah. So thank you, thank you both.
No, great
Thank you
discussion.
so much.
Yeah, a lot of fun.
Thank you. Look forward to next year.
Yes. Chef has been our sponsor for the podcast from ChefConf here in Austin, Texas. Learn more about Habitat, Inspec, and Chef's focus on continuous automation at chef.io. Listen to more episodes of the New Stack Bakers at thenewstack.io/podcast. Please rate and review us on iTunes, like us on YouTube, and follow us on SoundCloud. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.